Where does crude oil come from? Crude oil, often portrayed as the coagulated thick black liquid that spurts from the ground at oil rigs. Gloppy and unrefined straight from the earth. The oil man's black gold. It gets this nickname black gold from the monumental amount of products that can be processed from unrefined crude oil. Gasoline and diesel fuel to power our transport. Heating oil to warm our homes. And other petroleum products such as naphtha, waxes, and lubricating oils that ultimately become a part of almost every product we produce and consume. But where does it come from? We answer that, and 5 other things you should know about crude oil. But first, let's get some facts. The fast facts on crude oil. Crude oil is a naturally occurring fossil fuel, meaning it comes from the remains of dead organisms. Crude oil is made up of a mixture of hydrocarbons, hydrogen and carbon atoms. It exists in liquid form in underground reservoirs in the tiny spaces within sedimentary rocks. Or it can be found near the surface in oil sands. It is often found alongside natural gas and saline water. Crude oil is often interchangeably referred to as petroleum. This is because petroleum includes both the unrefined crude oil as well as refined petroleum products. It is non-renewable. Once it's gone and cannot be easily replaced. The petroleum products that can be processed from 1 barrel of crude oil. Where does crude oil come from? Crude oil is formed from the remains of dead organisms, diatoms, such as algae and zooplankton that existed millions of years ago in a marine environment. These organisms were the dominant forms of life on Earth at the time. FYI, dinosaurs weren't around at this stage. So any of those stories you've heard that fossil fuel is from dinosaurs was simply not the case. As they lived, these organisms absorbed energy from the sun and stored it as carbon molecules within their bodies. Once they died, their remains sank to the bottom of the oceans or riverbeds and were buried in layers of sand, mud and rock. Over millions of years, the remains were buried deeper and deeper under more sediment and organic materials. The enormous pressure, high temperatures, and lack of oxygen transformed the organic matter into a waxy substance called kerogen. With even more heat, pressure, and time, the kerogen undergoes a process called catagenesis, which transforms the kerogen into hydrocarbons. Different combinations of pressure, heat, and the original composition of organic material will determine the type of hydrocarbon formed. In this case, the hydrocarbons form crude oil. Other examples are asphalt if the temperature is lower, and natural gas if the temperature is higher. After the oil is formed, it moves through tiny pores in the surrounding rock from an area of high pressure to low pressure. This is often upwards. Some oil might make it all the way to the surface where it pools. In other cases, the oil will get trapped under impermeable layers of rock or clay where it will form underground reservoirs. How deep underground is crude oil? Oil seemingly keeps getting deeper and deeper. But that isn't the total truth. In reality, the oil, if anything, has only ever moved upwards. It is only the drilling for the oil that keeps needing to go deeper and further, as the higher up and easier to reach oil reservoirs are used up. The earliest year where data is available, 1949, shows the average depth of oil wells drilled was 3,500 feet. By 2008, the average rose to 6,000 feet. And the deepest well currently existing is a massive 40,000 feet deep. That's 11,000 feet more than the height of Mount Everest. Not all drilling is straight down. When they say depth, it means how far they had to drill. Sometimes this means covering huge horizontal distances too. How do you know where to find oil? Geologists are the masters of locating oil. Often called oil exploration, geologists will look for an area that ticks all the boxes of finding an oil trap, aka striking black gold. Oil is often found in the vast underground reservoirs where ancient seas were once located. This can either be beneath land or out in the ocean below the seabed. During the earlier years of oil mining, the geologists would study the soil, surface rock, and other surface features to determine if oil may be lying below. Later came satellite imagery, along with more technological advances such as gravity meters, means to test the Earth's magnetic field, and sniffers that detect the smell of hydrocarbons. The most common way used today is to generate shock waves that pass through the rock layers and reflect back to the surface where they can be interpreted for signs of oil traps. This is done with seismic source devices such as a compressed air gun, a thumper truck, or explosives. They then mark the location using GPS coordinates on land or by marker buoys on water. Which country has the most oil? According to the most recent data from the IEA, an average of 100 million barrels of oil were produced per day worldwide in 2018. That includes 32 million barrels a day of crude oil only, and 68 million barrels of crude oil, condensates, NGLs and oil from non-conventional sources. The top 5 oil-producing nations are responsible for over half of the world's production of crude oil. The top 5 oil-producing countries in 2019 to date are: USA, 17 million barrels per day. Russia, 12 million barrels per day. Saudi Arabia, 10 million barrels per day. Canada, 6 million barrels per day. Iraq, 5 million barrels per day. How much oil is left in the world? With production still on the rise as it has been for decades, experts are trying to calculate when, if ever, oil will run out. It isn't a simple science, because well, it is still unknown exactly how much oil is trapped in the earth in places unexplored. However, BP have made an estimate. The estimate comes from the amount of oil each country believes they can produce from proved reserves, the reserves they currently have access to, using their existing technology, while still turning a profit, at the current rate of extraction. And the year they give for the end of oil production if things remain the exact same as they are today, 2067. Yep, only another 48 years. That means without finding more reservoirs, reducing our consumption, or developing new technology, oil production could cease in 2067. But I wouldn't put that date down in permanent marker. Every previous doom date prediction made has always been pushed back.